IVM.
If you obviously wake up late in the game and say that, hey, now I need to be diverse and suddenly need to let go of 30% of your workforce to accommodate 30% of another gender, yes, it's going to be very, very difficult for you to do that. But absolutely not. I mean, as I said, we only actually looked at these numbers 2 years in and we were like, okay, this is awesome. We're obviously on the right track. Our numbers have always been exceptional. We've grown at a rate far greater than what the industry has operated in. I'm very, very proud of our bottom line. For me, I think the more different the people are, the better the conversations are, the better the arguments are. You challenge each other more. You understand each other's perspectives more, and which is why you come up with rich creative. And at the end of the day, when you go to a client and say that, I will never cosmetize an idea just because you tell me to cosmetize an idea, because you know what, I believe, and the 500 people that I work with who come from various different backgrounds, who are your perfect dipset, believe that this is cosmetizing and not really advertising.
Hello and welcome to the Filter Coffee Podcast. My guest today is Pooja Jauhari, CEO of The Glitch, which, for those of you who are not from the advertising industry, is a leading digital creative agency. For those of you who are from the industry, you will of course be very familiar with the fact that Glitch is one of the few places in the advertising industry which is extremely diverse when it comes to its workforce. Whether it is having a man-to-woman ratio of 50-50, which is unheard of in the industry, or having employees from multiple genders or from the larger LGBTQ family, Glitch has always been ahead of the curve. I want to speak to Pooja about how such an organizational culture originated, and more importantly, how they are able to protect it. I also wanted to speak to her about her new initiative, which is called Seat at the Table, which is all about supporting diversity in the startup movement. Welcome to the Filter Coffee Podcast, Pooja. How have you been doing?
Thank you, Karthik. It's so good to hear you and see you. I've been doing as well as can be given what's happening around us, but everyone's safe, everyone's happy, and I think that's what counts, right?
Absolutely.
We got our first jab, which is just has been the highlight of my year, honestly.
Yeah. That was 2020 for you guys. You run probably one of the most creative outfits out there, and I've been to your office multiple times. Everybody thrives in that energy, in that office, etc. But how did you guys manage this entire year last year?
Firstly, thank you for that. We're very, very proud of our culture and just of us as people. But 2020 was very tough. I'm not going to lie. It was tough on multiple levels. Just the impact that this had on all of us as human beings in the organization. And I'm pretty sure that happened to everybody in the world. That was very, very great. And to be able to still operate and have a day job, come to work and be creative and sit in front of your computer while you have absolute chaos happening in the background, I think it was spectacular that we were able to do it. I can't believe we all managed it.
Yeah.
Just as a race, that we figured this out and we were able to work remotely, and we would read all of that nonsense in the mornings in our newspapers and our apps and still be cheerful or not cheerful but still survive the day was for me quite big. So let's break it up. As an organization, we had a lull moment in April and May, but everybody rallied together and we won multiple businesses, many of them focused on tech, almost 15 new businesses, to make up for all of that we weren't able to bring home, right? So people really rallied together. We started off with, hey, we can see the light at the end of the tunnel. It is going to be okay. Then mid-year, it sort of vanished again. Then we saw it again. And we managed to sort of close the year in a way that was not scary. That's all that I say.
Right.
We pulled through. All our clients stayed with us, but the impact on everyone's mental health was massive, including mine. And I worked with a life coach, I worked with a therapist, just to be able to get through everything that we were all dealing with, personally and professionally. And that's what everyone did. Everyone was very, very open about the help they were taking and sharing that information with each other. That, hey, you know what? I spoke to this therapist and this is what I learned. Very simple things like an exercise on what you can control and what you can't control in your day just helps you narrow out all of the anxiety you potentially could be facing, right? Just simple things like that. We were all doing things to keep ourselves afloat, and we all shared that information with each other, which was great. So that's how it was professionally and personally. But everyone's safe. Whoever was sick came back. We did obviously have, a few very heartbreaking tragedies in our colleagues' families. But all in all, most of us are doing okay.
Which is amazing.
Yeah.
To hear. And I think
Yeah.
a lot of organizations have not been that lucky, and I hope it stays that way.
Yeah.
At the
That's
Glitch.
what.
We're talking about obviously working from home and creative output and how we are performing as an organization. All of these, of course, comes with a lot of privilege. Of course, a lot of people out there who won't be able to talk about these things.
That's
But
right.
within that realm of creative organizations like yours, what was in 2020, for example, your most challenging moment, like something that you were, I mean, nobody was prepared for any of this, but when you felt really, really low, when you felt absolutely unprepared for, was there a moment like that?
I have many moments like that, not just one. But if I had to, I think it was a decision on, it came easy. So I have to say that. And it came easy because of the people that I have around me and the support system that we all have. Is how are we going to get our company out of this crisis? And the biggest crisis for an organization, are people who are healthy, everyone was okay. But what do you do when it comes to business? What do you do when it comes to a large part of our business is production, a large part of our business is video, right? Took a massive hit last year. And we had to start taking decisions to diversify. When we're working remotely, do we need to pull back some of the plans we had possibly made for 3 years later? And those were very, very important decisions that we took together. And the result of that was that at the end of the year, in December, before we went off on our 10-day break, we announced a whole new glitch. We decided that we want to be part of a network globally. So we moved to be part of the VML network, right? It's something that we worked on to make happen. We decided that our offerings can't be just X, Y, and Z. We need to structure it far better. That means that there has to be some serious skill building we all do while we're dealing with a lot of stress. And the leadership took on a lot of the stress. The leadership said that we will skill build so that we are prepared for what 2021, which is also going to be a very challenging year, has in store for us. So we completely diversified. We made good decisions. We built up services and we built out an offering and a narrative that completely prepared us for 2021. And we got into 2021 on the back of 15 new wins. Some of our clients started stabilizing. We all went through a shit mental crisis. We helped each other and we came out of it. And for me, that was extraordinary that we were all able to do that.
Yeah. When you talk about Glitch, right? I'm always amazed at multiple things around that organization. Right? And one of the things that I've always been most amazed about is the ease with which you've been such an inclusive and diverse organization, right? Starting with you, many of the leadership at Glitch are women. And you have members of the third gender in your organization. You have people who are members of the LGBTQ community. Talk to us a little bit about, and I know I'm shifting gears from the pandemic to inclusion, but it is in line with what we're going to talk about, which is your initiative a little bit into the conversation. Talk to us a little bit about the origin of this culture. Where did it come from, and how did you protect it?
I wish I had a very philosophical, fancy answer to that, but it's very simple. We all took a decision at the start when we were 10, 12 people in the company. And we said that for us, we will never sit in a room and make a quota. We will never sit in a room that these are the kind of people we need, or this is the kind of advertising very often has stereotyped the kind of people that can come into this industry. There's when you see an ad person, this person is from the advertising and marketing world, right? And that was very important for us. It was very important that we hired blind. And by hiring blind, we meant that this person didn't need to have a particular degree. This person didn't need to come from a particular city, didn't need to be of a particular gender, didn't need to be of in a particular life stage. It didn't matter what their orientation was, what their caste was, what their religion was. Are you the right person for the job? That was it. The right person for the job. And it so happened, I want you to know, this was a decision we took very early on. But it's not something that we revisited every year. It's not something that every new person came in and we told them, hey, this is how we hire. This is our culture. This is how you need to be. It's organic. And 11 years in, our company is 50-50. I know very few companies that actually have that. 50-50 when it comes to male-female. We have the highest number of women in our leadership. We have multiple genders, multiple orientations, multiple religions, all of it. And no one has actually sat back and said, or we've had an HR team that has made these decisions. This is how we're going to hire. Or, hey, you know what? We've exceeded our quota on this one or not exceeded. It's not something we revisited. We just happened to look at it when we were in our 10th year and we said, hey, it's obviously gone well because we were completely blind about it. And what we don't recognize as people is that if we decide that there are going to be no biases in our mind, the world is 50-50. It will naturally occur.
Right.
But it's you that needs to take that filter out.
There's a counterpoint to that logic, right? Like, see, today, if you look at the CEOs of all Fortune 500 companies in India, if you take any boardroom in India of large or even medium-sized companies, you will find that the people who are there belong to a certain caste or a certain group of castes, most certainly upper castes, right? And there'll be obviously over-indexing on a certain religion. And today, if you were to sort of put an ad out there for a position, obviously a majority of the people who will apply for the position will be the privileged lot, right? And I love your logic in terms of hiring blind, but that whole conversation about equality versus equity, how do you manage that? Because for any position that Glitch would have initially advertised, I'm assuming a lot of the candidates would have been, people from the privileged caste, right, or the privileged sections of the society. How do you solve for that conundrum?
By example, because when this kind of stuff spreads, and I'm going to talk about Glitch as a reference point, right? Because I don't have all of the data to support what happens with Fortune 500 companies and etc. I definitely want to look at that data. But let me talk about Glitch. For us, we've always had batches of people, and we've never advertised positions. They've almost come through references to us. That's really the organization has been built very organically. It's only now over the last couple of years where we put up posts on LinkedIn or you'll put something. Otherwise, it's been very organically. I know someone who does this, and most often we have not hired people from our own industry. And because of that, the mix just happened very organically. And that's the point that I want to make, that we've reached that stage in our world today where we are very conscious of the divide. We're very conscious of uh, of privilege and the people who are not privileged. We're very conscious of that. But when you operate without any bias, you will see in the long term, it'll all equalize, because the world is made of all sorts of people. The world is made of all sorts of religions, of all sorts of castes, of all sorts of genders, right? And if you have no bias, if you operate without bias, in the long term, the world will equalize itself. And that's what happened at Glitch. I mean, we didn't start off saying that we are going to hire 3 people from this caste and 3 people from this caste and 3 people from this caste. We didn't do that. We just said the right person for the job. And we built an environment where whoever came in felt included, right? And when someone feels included, they tell that to 10 other people. And those 10 other people also want to be included. And that's how you build almost these circles of connections where people know you as an organization that believes, has certain values. We've done a lot of things wrong, Karthik. And I will not say that we've made no mistakes. We made a lot of mistakes as people, as an organization. So many things when I sleep at night, if I have to introspect, many things that I've done wrong. There's one thing that I'm pretty confident of, which is that, there was never bias. We've been bad at a lot of things. Our industry operates with a certain kind of pressure. I wish we had been able to ease that before. I wish, as leaders, we would take firmer stands, which we take today, by the way.
Right.
Today, when we reach the stage, 11 years in, we will decide if we want to work with a client or not. We will decide if someone is good to work with or not. So those are things that we're handling. But I'm very confident that the inclusion part of it was never something that we took for granted, ever.
Beautiful. And I think 2 things strike me from what you said, right? Like, one is the word of mouth, right? Like, I think, today, if you speak to anybody who's an aspiring candidate in the advertising space, they would most certainly say, I would love to work at Glitch, because I think, in a way, very clearly, you've never been biased at any level in hiring people. But I think the culture must have itself attracted a lot of differently thinking people. And I'm assuming that is one way to explain the rich diversity you have at Glitch. The other thing that you said, which struck me, is also about our industry, right? Like, advertising as an industry. It's amazing, right? One of the words that I hate passionately in this industry is when people say service a client. Right? I'm sure
makes me angry,
yeah,
honestly.
Exactly, right? And it's for some strange reason, maybe it has a lot to do with the Mad Men times, I guess. It's just become ingrained in this industry, right? It's a client, and an agency services a client. Well, in reality, at least what you and I do today is more of a partnership with the brand, and we help them grow with our expertise, isn't it? The other counterpoint to the topic that we're talking about, right? And I would love you to bust this myth is that diversity at a workplace comes at a cost, right? Like, people feel that if you really need to make sure that it is a diverse environment, you probably have to cut some corners and you accommodate people, etc. Right? I personally believe that if you had a very, very diverse workforce, your output will be phenomenal. In fact, it might add to the top line. What are your thoughts on that?
I mean, it's rubbish. If you obviously wake up late in the game and say that, hey, now I need to be diverse, and suddenly need to let go of 30% of your workforce to accommodate 30% of another gender, yes, it's going to be very, very difficult for you to do that.
Right.
But absolutely not. I mean, as I said, we only actually looked at these numbers 2 years in, and we were like, okay, this is awesome. We're obviously on the right track. Our numbers have always been exceptional. We've grown at a rate far greater than what the industry has operated at. I'm very, very proud of our bottom line. And for me, I think the more different the people are, the better the conversations are, the better the arguments are, the better the you challenge each other more. You understand each other's perspectives more, and which is why you come up with rich creative. And at the end of the day, when you go to a client and say that, I will never cosmetize an idea just because you tell me to cosmetize an idea, because you know what I believe. And the 500 people that I work with who come from various different backgrounds, who are your perfect dipset, believe that this is cosmetizing and not really advertising. You normalize certain kind of conversations. So when we sit in front of a CEO and very young people, a 25, 26-year-old, very passionately sits in front of a CEO with 35, 40 years of experience, massive company. And you tell this client who's very excited about an idea that he or she wants to take into the market, this 25-year-old says, no, you're being biased. That's when that 45, 50-year-old wants a 25-year-old sitting right next to him or her, right? That's how you create these exceptional seats on the table, because you add value. You're not yes men and women. You really push a client to think more, because you have that support in your office, right? You're not all thinking the same. You're all thinking different stuff. So you're like, hey, listen, I feel very confident about what I'm telling you, because you know what? There are 500 different kind of people in my company, and we all sort of feel that this is incorrect. That gives you a superpower. Your diversity is really your superpower. And that really lends to what you even put out into the market, what you put out into society. Because as professionals, people who create content, people who get paid to create content, we have such a huge responsibility. Because when we put out content that makes a gender feel degraded, that makes a community feel degraded, or only celebrate a community on one day in the year, or a gender on one day in the year, and not be consistent, that's cosmetizing. You're doing it for marketing. You're not doing it because you truly believe in that purpose. And how do you push brands to really, truly believe in that purpose and say no to a lot of money that might be cosmetizing? So I truly believe, I really hope, and that's something that Varun, Rohit and I talk about a lot, that even after us, that when we are not at Glitch anymore, that I hope that just that filter that we have, that stays, and I hope it does.
I'm sure it will. And for the uninitiated, you have to probably explain what cosmetizing is. It is needlessly wrapping something on a cause piece. Is that how would you explain it?
Yeah, you pick a cause and you use that cause as a marketing moment to advertise. So you're cosmetizing. It's something that a young colleague of mine, I think, came up with. I'm not sure if it's a real word, but I have used it ever since he used it in one of the films we did. And it's just stuck. It happened a few years ago. And that's part of our creative lens now. We normalize, we don't cosmetize.
Yeah. No, I love that term. In fact, we started a cause marketing practice early last year, and someone in that team came up with this phrase that this is a purpose wash. Right. So I like both the terms. I'm going to use them interchangeably. But a lot of the convictions that you just displayed in what you explained a minute earlier, I saw a lot of that in the fore, when you announced a few days back that you're starting an initiative called Seat at the Table, right?
Yep.
Talk to us a little bit about how this idea originated in your head.
So Seat at the Table is a passion project. It's me putting a lens of purpose to how I spend my personal time and my personal capital. And more so because I'm creating my own club. VCs are, again, I'm not, VCs are so often only men. They're only, my husband's part of these groups, which are only men, and they only discuss. I'm like, why wouldn't you add me to that group? And I'm like, I don't think they'd be comfortable with it. You know what I mean? And I'm just like, okay, I'm going to create my own club, which is point number one. So it has many things. All right. The second part of it is I worked with many, many companies last year as a creative release, because, given my position, I have so many, founders and entrepreneurs who reach out to me for investments / advice, etc. And I worked with all of them. May not be everyone, most of them that came to me last year, I worked with them. And I realized I saw a lot of people who looked exactly the same. And, I dug deeper and I started reading more and more about the differences in how ideas get invested in, or just the unconscious biases that exist even in this industry for that matter. And I said that I want to play a small role in, giving equal opportunities.
Sorry to interrupt you. What do you mean by when you said they all looked same/similar?
Yeah, so they were most often men from great colleges, right? Most often that was what I saw. Very few female founders, very, very few female founders. One founder from the LGBTQI community, one founder from religious minorities. That's what it's out of the 70 that I worked with, that was my data point, right? That's how it was. And that bothered me. And I was like, why does that happen? And as I dug deeper, I realized there are so many companies who actually have recognized this long before I have and have tried to do something else. So globally, there are multiple companies that exist, that work with different kind, with razor focus to work with women, or razor focus to work with the LGBTQI community, founders, from the LGBTQI community, etc. In India, we have a few, we have Leap, and we have a few others that I know of. I don't want it to be just razor focused on one. I want to build an environment which is inclusive, because I did that at Glitch. When Glitch happened, and as we built Glitch, we didn't say we are going to hire this and not hire that. There was never a not. It was always inclusive. And I want to put that lens even to seat at the table. And I want to see that if I go out and say, hey, I'm unbiased, all ideas are welcome. Whoever you may be are welcome. In the long run, it'll equalize itself, because I've seen that as an example with Glitch. And I know I'm pretty confident that's what will happen with seat at the table as well. So the initiative was born. Seat at the table is a term that exists, that I have used very, very often, which I continue to use very often. And I just thought it was apt because I have a seat at the table, right? I have a seat at an important table. I am sitting in a position where I can create opportunities. And if I don't use that well to create a world of equal opportunities, I wasted everything that I have done so far, because I feel so passionately about it. And that's where Seat at the Table was born, honestly, over a dinner conversation with Varun, my husband. And I was like, hey, I work with so many companies. I want to put structure to it. I just don't want to call it a VC fund. Definitely want there to be a lens of purpose. And I said, Seat at the Table. And he said, hey, that's a great name. And I was like, yeah, that's a great name. And that's really how it happened. And then I kept bouncing the idea off with a lot of my friends I kept talking to. I also spoke with, my people I trust in WPP about it, so my regional leader in Singapore. I kept sort of brainstorming with what I wanted to do and what the initiative was. And what you see right now is a lot of dialogue and conversation with a lot of people that I finally put together like this.
Brilliant. And I can totally visualize that conversation between you and one because we're discussing the name.
Yeah.
Right. I love the name. I think I love what it metaphorically stands for. Right. In a way,
Yeah.
I think everything you've just discussed about inclusivity and access and everything and privilege and everything, I think you sort of encompass in that one name. I found it interesting that on your website, you really don't define it as any one thing.
Yeah.
You're not calling it an accelerator. You're not calling it a fund. You're not calling it an advisory or mentorship or anything else. So I'm curious in terms of, it's very clear in terms of what you want to do, but I'm assuming working with the diverse kind of founders and their ideas and helping them make it. But what would success look like? What is the change that you would like to see at the end of, say, a couple of years?
My mission is really very simple. Can I see a very clear difference in the kind of entrepreneurs over the next 5 years? Can I see more companies that are founded by different kind of people? And that for me would be success. And do all of them get backed? And with a little bit of backing from me and with a lot of other people, it's a very diverse entrepreneurial pool in our country. That would be success for me. And that's really what I'm after, honestly.
Right. I was recently speaking to Saloni, who heads one of the funds in India called Lumikai, and we were talking about two things. One is, if you looked at the data of all the organizations that were funded in the US in 2019, just before the pandemic, that is, less than 5% of it was organizations founded by women. right?
Yeah.
And we in that episode we went on to talk a lot about how gaming as a market in India is another one where there are very few women at the helm of companies that are creating gaming as an experience, and
Yeah.
hence, which is why also gaming as an experience is very an experience skewed towards men, right? Today you don't have games that are created with the woman in mind, not as much as we would want to, right?
Yeah.
In a way, if you look at this purely from an investment, a startup ecosystem, a funding lens, why do you think that bias exists? What do you think sort of drives that bias? Yeah.
Honestly, I just don't know why biases exist in the first place, because it's so easy to just put it aside and just to operate normally, without all of that cloud that has been dumped in our brains through the way we've been brought up, through conditioning, through content. It's all of that clouds your mind. Because I don't think a baby is biased, right? A young child is not biased. And why
Right.
is that? That's because there is not enough conditioning there.
Yeah.
And the answer is it answers that I mean, it is not something that you and I are going to be able to solve over this call, right? Not at all. But if more and more people are aware, are conscious that biases exist, the moment you recognize that in yourself, that you are biased sometimes, you could be racist sometimes, unconsciously, you make a change. But if you don't recognize that, if you don't recognize that that is wrong, that is incorrect, or you know what, that statement was just not needed, or if we're not able to have a healthy dialogue and be able to make people, to give each other the benefit of doubt and teach each other about biases, we are going to continue to be in this state. So why do biases exist? Because of conditioning, because of all of everything that has been thrown to us since we were children. That's why they exist, right?
No, true. No, absolutely. And love what you said about recognizing what's inside you, right?
Yeah.
If you go to do a genetic survey, everybody, I guess, that you meet in the next 1 hour will probably tell you that I don't think I'm actually biased, but I know the world is. But, when you put that mirror to yourself,
Absolutely.
yeah.
Varun and I have this conversation because we have a young daughter, right? And we had this very honest conversation and we continue to do it. Say, are we racist? Are we biased? Are we those people as well? And we made a list of things that we have said or done and recognize that those were incorrect and those were unconscious. But we're confident that we won't make those mistakes again. No one is pure. Everyone has said stuff, most often unconsciously, because let's just believe that most of the world is not bad, right? We're not assholes as people. It's stuff around us which has been allowed, which we think is allowed, and we just go on and do it, right? But the moment you recognize that, hey, this shouldn't be allowed, this shouldn't be said, this is not how we treat people, and you can tell each other that and not react like, how could you call me a racist, or how could you say that I was biased about it, but actually take a second and really recognize that, okay, I said that, I'm not a bad person, but I said that, and I can change and I can be different. And that's what it takes. If all of us decide to do that, there will be no bias.
Yeah, true. That sounds utopian, but when you break it down like that, sounds very, very possible, right?
Yeah.
You spoke about Varun, when you looking at this from a Leia, which is the name of your daughter, from Leia's perspective. How has parenthood sort of changed your lens on some of these things? Has it?
Of course, massively.
Mm.
I mean, you're responsible for shaping someone's mind.
Yeah.
That's a huge responsibility. And the fact that today we're informed, I do think that we're informed as individuals, as people, as professionals, as human beings. We have to take, that into account when we're raising our child, right? That there are a lot of things that we were not aware of as children and made us behave or react in a certain way as adults. We want to make sure that Leia doesn't make these mistakes, but newer ones. So, as I said, we're very honest with each other on our good, our bad, our ugly, our fabulous. And we kind of like find the perfect mix. And Leia sees us as real people and not gods, Because for me, that was
Right.
the biggest thing that shattered in my brain when I saw my mom as a human being and not a god, with her own flaws. And I saw all the elders in my, when you're a child, you look at all of these people in your life, your grandparents, your parents, your aunts, uncles, and you're like, everything they do is absolutely right? Because they're older to you. But then you grow up and then you learn and you're like, okay, I don't agree with 90% of what was probably told to me as a child, but I still, that sort of conundrum in my mind was quite a bit. So I'm very careful with Leia that she sees me as a real person with all my flaws.
That's beautiful. So can you double click on that a little bit? It's a very beautiful thought. So you're saying you don't mind failing in front of her. You don't
Of course, she has to
mind
see
not
me.
knowing in front of her. Is that what you mean? Yeah.
Absolutely. She has to see me as a person with multiple emotions. She can't see me as a person who is just always strong and always put together and always has it under control. I definitely don't want her to see me like that. And neither does Varun. She sees us as people who are figuring it out. She sees us as people who, have our good days and our bad days and have all sorts of emotions. And we cry and we laugh and we get angry and we're foolish and we're silly and we make mistakes. It's a combination of all of that, which Leia sees. So she doesn't grow up with this, I would say, this notion that she needs to be a certain way when she's an adult. Because adulting is like the biggest farce. Because only when you become an adult do you actually recognize that that adulting is really difficult.
Right. Pooja, we normally end the episode by asking our guest what he or she is watching, reading, listening to. Between the two of you, you guys are like the content headquarters of the country. What do you watch? What are you reading right now? What are you listening to?
Right now, I'm binge watching Peaky Blinders. I can't believe I haven't watched it for so long.
Neither have I. Is it any good?
It's amazing. Cillian Murphy is outstanding. So I'm actually binge watching it. I started it. It's Friday already, right? I think I started it last Friday. I'm up. Today I will finish all 5 seasons.
Excellent.
So, and I'm reading Seth Rogen's new book, which is insane. It's hilarious. So that's what I'm reading. What am I listening to? I listen to a lot of what Varun puts out. So that's
That is a lot. That's a full-time job in itself.
Yeah. So that's all. It's a lot. So that's what I'm listening to right now.
Wonderful. Pooja, thank you so much for your time and wishing you and Glitch and SATT all the luck in the coming days. Stay safe.
Thank you. You too, Karthik. It was very nice chatting with you.
Same here. If you like this podcast, don't forget to check out other interesting podcasts on the IVM network. You can listen to us on the IVM Podcast app or ivmpodcasts.com. You can also follow us on our social media. We are at IVM Podcasts on Twitter and Instagram. And if you want to reach out to me, I am _Karthik. That's Karthik with an H on Twitter. And filter_coffee. That's coffee with a K on Instagram.
I hope you enjoyed that show. If you aren't following us on social media, please do. We're IVM Podcasts on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. I'd like to thank the sponsors on the network this week, Seat, Cred, and Global Victoria. We thank you so much for making all of this possible. So this week on Cyrus Says, Tapsi Pannu was recently featured in the Netflix original Haseen Dilruba was on. They discussed her experiences in Bollywood and a whole lot more. On Begin the Journey, Ashish Vidyarthi enlightens us with his wisdom on how one can get freedom from their own thoughts or insecurities when they communicate with others. On The Millennial Athlete, Tanvi and Shlok fill us in on all the drama from the world of sports with Wimbledon, Euros, and World Test cricket making headlines every day. On Postcards from Nowhere, Utsav Mamoria kicks off a new series, Beneath the Veneer. We travel to the Hashemite Kingdom of Jordan, where he takes us through his first experience of encountering the Red Sea. We have a brand new show, Misconduct. It's a true crime show hosted by Ragvi, a lawyer, and Nisha, a PR pro. They tell us about the story of Cyanide Malika, the lady who offered cyanide-laden sweets to women and after they died, loot their gold. On the Global Victoria Tech Talks podcast, we showcase some compelling new tech stories coming out of Melbourne. On one episode, Pawan Srinath speaks to Joe Agan from Nelnet International, where they discuss how the pandemic has affected the edtech sector and its evolution. Another episode has Varun Dugirala talking to Ross Simons from Big Ant Studios about the gaming ecosystem and how they envision translating a sport to a game. And with that, I hope to see you again next week.
We live in an age of disruption, of immense change in every aspect of work, life, and business. But is the old way of doing things truly dead? And are we ever going to stop saying the new normal? Join me, Varun Dugirala, on Advertising Is Dead every Tuesday as I talk to entrepreneurs, leaders, creators, and change makers from across business, media, marketing, and beyond to dig a little deeper into how we got here, what we're doing now, and where we're headed. You can catch all the episodes of Advertising Is Dead on the IVM Podcast website, app, or wherever you get your podcast from.